Hello BookTube, I'm Jonathan, and last week I made a post asking if any of you guys would be interested in a book recommendation based on the specific type of sci-fi that you are looking for. And I received a ton of great comments, and I have picked out 10 of those in order to provide recommendations for today. Now, if you didn't get your comment picked or you didn't see the post in time, don't worry, because I'm pretty confident that at least one of these 10 books are going to overlap with the types of things that you're looking for in sci-fi and might be a book that you will enjoy as well. So let's get started with our first recommendation. Up first, we have a request from Piece of Cake. I enjoy something more on the literary side of sci-fi, something that digs into the human side. Roadside Picnic and A Canticle for Leibowitz are some of my faves. Alright, I've got something for you, Piece of Cake. This is an easy one. You could call it a piece of pizza. I'm an idiot. Anyway, a book that I think you might enjoy is Solaris by Stanislav Lem. So this is a book that I read not too long ago and was one that I really connected with. So we have a space mission to a planet, a water planet, and on arrival, strange things start happening, and it's a little bit creepy and surreal and mysterious, and I really like the tone and the descriptions. I think this is a really well-written book, and as the story goes along, we dive into some really interesting things to do with philosophy as well as your more typical sci-fi concepts. And so, if you're interested in sci-fi that kind of makes you think about yourself and your place within the universe and other people and really sort of abstract concepts, I think Solaris is the type of book that will really just mess you with your brain in the absolute best kind of way. So I hope you pick up Solaris and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Alright, our second recommendation comes from That Fuzzy Potato. I love sci-fi that is more about physics and the concepts within, hence my love of Baxter and Liu, though I do have Reynolds on my TBR already. So, That Fuzzy Potato, I think we have a lot in common because I absolutely loved Ring by Stephen Baxter, as well as the Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy by Cixin Liu, and pretty sure everybody knows how much love I have for Alistair Reynolds at this point as well. So, it seems like you're looking for some harder sci-fi, something that's going to focus on the concepts, the technology, the ideas, and you guys might be able to tell what's coming if you've been watching the channel for a while, because I haven't been able to stop talking about Permutation City by Greg Egan. So this is just an absolutely phenomenal, mind-blowing, hard sci-fi cyberpunk novel. It deals with some really cool stuff to do with virtual reality and clones, and really messes with my understanding of mathematics and physics. It is a book that does get a little bit granular, kind of diving into the details of things to do with biochemistry and kind of an alternate sort of set of rules for physics that Egan establishes in this kind of other world. But it's not just all about the science. I think the story is great too. I think it's really well written. I think there's some deep characters, and my goodness, every few chapters there was just an M. Night Shyamalan, what the heck is going on here? I feel like this book opened my mind to the point where I felt like I knew everything and understood nothing. I absolutely love it. Give Permutation City a try. Next up, our third request comes from Francesco. Hi, I'm pretty new to the genre. I really like books that tell stories with lots of heart or deepness at a philosophical level. I love both The Dark Forest and Slaughterhouse 5, so the hardness of the sci-fi doesn't matter. I just want to feel both warmth and love for everything in this life, or a profound sense of hopelessness. So I love this comment, Francesco. He's saying, Jonathan, don't give me any recommendations that are going to leave me with mixed feelings and emotions on this book, this world, the universe. I either just want to end up on cloud 9 or rocking myself to sleep hiding underneath a bed. So I like to think of myself as a somewhat positive and optimistic person. I would really like to be able to help you out here, but to be honest, in terms of sci-fi exploring futures and technology, there's a lot more sort of dangers, things to be scared of out there than overly optimistic sci-fi. Andy Weir's a current author that I think has a pretty positive outlook. So I'm sorry to have to do this to you, but I'm going to recommend to you Blind Sight by Peter Watts. So Blind Sight is about a space mission to find the source of a message that is being heard out in space. But really, it's an examination of intelligence and consciousness. At this point, I can't even hear the word consciousness without thinking of Blindsight. And in a way that it doesn't make me feel comfortable on the subject matter. One that left me absolutely shook and is really going to leave the gears in your brain turning for quite a while after you read it. This book isn't necessarily the most fun book to read. The world building is kind of cryptic. It kind of took me a while to piece certain elements together, and there is some hard sci-fi in there, but when the big concepts are revealed, it will just hit you like a ton of bricks. I think this is just a great book to think about, to talk about, to have nightmares about, and yes, I hope it helped you achieve what you were looking for. Okay, our fourth request comes from Jackie. The Sun Eater series is my first sci-fi that I enjoyed, also Dune. Something with fantasy, political intrigue, philosophy, and interesting supporting characters. So I'm glad to have you on Team Sun Eater. Sun Eater series by Christopher Rocchio, probably my favorite ongoing sci-fi series. Definitely check it out. I've mentioned it in a bunch of my videos. I think it's great sci-fantasy, sword and planet type fun, but with some pretty deep themes and stuff as well. So if you're looking for something in that vein, I have to recommend Deathstalker by Simon R. Green. So I think this is going to hit on a lot of the things that you are looking for, because it also has a bit of a sci-fantasy feel to it. It's sword and planet, so we have some interesting technology, but also some cool sword fights as well. It also has a lot of that, those kind of political machinations, people from powerful houses all trying to form alliances or undermine each other, and it has a lot of really entertaining characters as well. You can kind of get a bit of a sense of the tone for the book just based on the character names. We have Owen Deathstalker, we have Valentine Wolf, and they have so much personality. The dialogue is really witty. It's a whole lot of fun. I think a slight difference between the two series is that Sun Eater is a little bit more literary. There's a lot more sort of historical references. I think thematically it's a little bit more deep. Whereas Deathstalker is a bit more pulpy. It's kind of tongue-in-cheek, it's a lot of fun, it's a little bit gory. So if you're looking for something in that vein, but just a little bit more focused on the ideas, the action, the adventure, the fun, then please try out Deathstalker. I think it goes a little bit under the radar. I've only read the first book, but I do plan to read at least one more Deathstalker book by the end of the year. Alright, next up, our fifth request comes from Christian. I'd like to read something that stands out for its prose. I like my Asimovs and my Clarks as much as the next guys, but I'm weak for the fine sculptured phrases. Among my favorite books are Hyperion, Lord of Light, and any of Bradbury's short stories collections, and I'm currently craving something like that. Alright, first off, shots fired at Asimov and Clark. Guys, apparently you needed to work on your prose a little bit. Although I don't entirely disagree. I think Asimov's prose is fine, it's serviceable, it tells the story it wants to tell. Clark? I think he's kind of halfway in between. I think some of the science stuff is a bit dry, but I don't know, I think Clark can be a little bit poetic at times, but I definitely get what you mean with some of the examples that you gave. There's some very well written books, and I want to give you another classic recommendation, just because classic sci-fi writers have a bit of a reputation for not being the most polished writers, the most enjoyable prose to read. So I'm going to give you More Than Human by Theodore Sturgeon. More Than Human is about an interesting cast of characters with some people that have some forms of disabilities, but also some forms of supernatural abilities. And the book is told in 3 parts, and in each of those parts there were moments where I was thinking, I'm not exactly sure where this is going and how these things are connected, and then Theodore Sturgeon brought them all together beautifully, both in terms of the novel itself and the interconnectedness of things, and people coming together, evolving, the kind of direction that humanity is going. I thought there's some really interesting high-level concepts, some really unique characters, and the emotions and the importance of those ideas he conveyed beautifully through the prose. I found him to be a very powerful and impactful writer, and when I mentioned this in a couple of recent videos, I got a lot of positive feedback on some of Theodore Sturgeon's other works, including his short stories. So this is the only book that I've read from him so far, but it definitely won't be the last. So we're halfway through the video, and for those of you thinking, Jonathan, will there be any reward for me sticking around to the end of the video? Yes. At the end of the video, I will be spinning the quantum wheel in order to find out the patron pick of the month. So stick around to that, see what the wheel lands on, and see what I'll be reading in the month of August. Moving on to our 6th request from Blue Man. I would like to see more soft sci-fi, as I am a person who's into social sciences, for example, sociology, psychology, anthropology, etc. I've read the Dune series, Hyperion, and Ubik. So those are all great picks. I'm a fan of those books as well, and if you're looking for someone with a background in anthropology, I have a mildly interesting story about Kurt Vonnegut. Kurt Vonnegut is one of my favorite writers, and he actually went to university. Yeah, not sure why I started skipping like a record player there. Anyway, university. Kurt Vonnegut, he was doing a combined undergrad and master's degree, and he completed his undergrad studies, but then all of his thesis proposals for his master's were rejected, and he just left without completing his degree. But then 25 years later, he was granted that degree. The thesis that was counted for the degree was his novel Cat's Cradle. So I'm not going to talk about Cat's Cradle today because I've talked a lot about that book before, one that I absolutely love. But I am going to recommend a Vonnegut book to you, and that is Slaughterhouse 5. So this is one of Vonnegut's more sci-fi books, as we have a character that comes unstuck in time. He moves through different time periods, and he does encounter aliens and some other cool sci-fi things like that. But it's not so much focused on the sci-fi concepts, the technology, the explanations. It's much more focused on people. Individuals dealing with trauma and things that come from war and relationships, as well as society as a whole, kind of the direction that we're heading, and a lot of existential questions to do with life and death. So if that's your kind of thing, definitely try out Kurt Vonnegut. It's pretty funny at times, but I think this is one of his more heavy books and definitely had an impact on me. I hope it works for you too. And here's our 7th request from Pedro. I loved A Memory Called Empire, where you had to keep on your toes to not drown in the politics and machinations, and could also experience a new culture. Could never find another alike. So I was a big fan of A Memory Called Empire as well as the sequel Desolation Called Peace. So for you, I want to recommend a particular author, and that is C.J. Cherryh, because I read a number of interviews with Arkady Martine, and she said that C.J. Cherryh was a big influence on her and her writing, in particular the Foreigner series and Cytine. So personally, I have read a little bit of C.J. Cherryh before, but only the first book in the Faded Sun trilogy called Kesrith. And to be honest, I was a little bit mixed on that. I didn't love it as much as I loved the Teixcalaan duology, but I definitely saw some connections in terms of the focus on culture and relationships and people and dialogue and kind of fitting into a new setting. And I definitely want to try more from C.J. Cherryh, as I've heard great things about some of her other series. And so even though I haven't read it, I'm going to probably read it along with you as well at some point. I'm going to pick for you Cytine by C.J. Cherryh. And the reason why I chose this one in particular is because it is a Hugo Award winner, so it's nice to be always able to check another one of those off the Hugo list, and I believe it's just 3 volumes, so it's a little bit less of a commitment than Foreigner, which I'm sure has multiple arcs to it, but has many books in the series. So Cytine is a little bit less daunting, and the reviews I've seen are really good, and it has a pretty interesting premise. So I might dive into that one in the future as well with you, and I hope you like Cytine. Moving on to our 8th request from Kim. I like when we discover new mysterious planets or stories about colonizing the solar system, and about terraforming with good character development and a mystery to solve. So this sounds like a pretty fun setup and a pretty fun premise for a book, and I actually have a brand new book to recommend with you that I think might line up with these requests perfectly. And that is the first book in the Betaverse series, A New Eden by Menelik Henry Dyer. So this book actually just came out last week, and it's a fun, fast-paced adventure that I think might appeal to fans of We Are Legion, We Are Bob by Dennis E. Taylor, as it has a range of concepts to do with things like virtual reality and the perception of time, as well as some fun things like terraforming and ring worlds, and it also includes what I would consider to be a really unique alien. Trying to communicate with this specific type of alien I found to be a lot of fun. So full disclosure, I did receive an early advance copy of this book, and I am friends with the author, but I legitimately do think it is a pretty good book, particularly from a debut author. When I read the book, it was self-published, but it has since been picked up by a publisher, so that's really exciting. If you want to support a new up-and-coming sci-fi author, a friend of ours from New Zealand, then definitely give this a go. I've seen some reviews from this on Reddit, on Amazon and Goodreads, and people seem to be having a lot of fun with it. And if you're a fan of audiobooks, I'm not that much of an audiobooker myself, but this is narrated by Luke Daniels, and I've heard fantastic reviews on the audiobook. So if that sounds like fun, try out the first book in the Betaverse series. Alright, for our second last request that comes from Night Owl, I like hard science fiction that raises philosophical questions about the nature of reality and what it is to be human. I enjoy elements of social commentary, plots focused on interpersonal dynamics, and creative sci-fi concepts. So for this one, I think I'm going to go with a book that I've mentioned in this video, not a previous pick, but one that did come up in another comment, and that is A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martine. So A Memory Called Empire has a fantastic premise. An ambassador travels from an independent station to the capital of Teixkalan because they are replacing the previous ambassador who died under mysterious circumstances. So this story delves into some really interesting things to do with being an outsider, being an immigrant. The duology has an LBGT relationship, so it has some social commentary, but that isn't the entire focus of the series. It also has just a really great murder mystery, some really interesting political machinations, and some great sci-fi concepts. I don't want to say exactly what it is, as it's a bit of a spoiler, but the Imago technology is one of my favorite ideas, one of my favorite pieces of tech in all of sci-fi. The first book does come to a nice breaking point, but I think both books together complete a nice story arc, and they do a good job of balancing the softer sciences with the harder sciences, and could be the type of thing that you're looking for. And our final request comes from Kelly. I'm looking for a time travel or loot story with morally grey characters or mystery thriller elements. Okay, so for this one I have picked... That was a bad joke. I regret doing that. Okay, for this one I have picked Replay by Ken Grimwood. So recently on my Discord server, someone said to me, Jonathan, how come you never talk about Replay by Ken Grimwood? And I have talked about Replay on the channel, but I guess not recently enough. So I'm glad I have an opportunity to talk about it, because I really enjoyed this book, and in it, we have a character that has a heart attack at the age of 43 and dies. Then they wake up at the age of 18 again. So it's this great story to do with what would you do if you got a second chance at life? What would you do if you got to relive your life again? And again, and again, and again, and again. So this is a time travel, time loop story with some really interesting themes, and it was really a lot of fun for me to place myself in that situation and think about what I would do given those opportunities, and would I do things similarly to this main character, and what I would do differently from this main character. I found it a bit of an interesting character study, as well as just a big high concept idea that was done really, really well, with a little bit of a mystery in there as well. So I hope, Kelly, that is something that you will enjoy too. So those are 10 personalized sci-fi book recommendations. Let me know your thoughts on those books, and if you're still looking for recommendations, feel free to join my Discord server. I'm sure either myself or one of our and many other knowledgeable sci-fi fans will be able to help you out. And just before you go, if you are interested in seeing what I'll be reading next month, here is this month's Quantum Wheel. Welcome to the Quantum Wheel, where all of the patron picks are both simultaneously picked and not picked until we observe a winner. Let's find out what I'll be reading in the month of August. A lot of super sci-fi books on the wheel this month. What is it going to land on? It looks like it might be The Gods Themselves. Yes, it held on. Isaac Asimov's The Gods Themselves is the winner for August. This is a Hugo winner, so I get to check another one off the Hugo list. I'm slowly making my way through all of them, and if you'd like to join me, pick up The Gods Themselves and read it in August. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, subscribe. It's free, and you can find more sci-fi content over here.